Good morning, everybody. Did I make you jump? Hello, everyone. How are we all doing? Hello, Ayush. Hello, Mark. Hello, Ankit. Hello, Finn. Hello, David. Hello, Champ. Nicola, of course. Thomas, Mix. Viresh, Jack, Telma. Ikanch. Winchy, good to see you. Jake, welcome. Thank you for stopping by Pal Bacon Gaming. Bobby. Rico, Danny, Sam, Marcus, Joe. Hello, everyone. How are we all doing on this fine Monday afternoon in the UK? Midday on the dot. Boom. Let's talk about yesterday's race. What a banger. What an absolute banger that was. Such a sick race. We've been asking for wet weather for a long time. And, well, Turkey delivered twofold, didn't it? Because we had the wet weather, but we also had a greasy track. New surface with no support series rubbering that surface in means it's an ice rink. And yes, I'm wearing my AlphaTauri shirt today. Because why not? Anyway, hope we're all well. It was a sick race. And we'll talk all about it. Maybe there's any one word to sum up the race in chat. What would my one word be? Something along the lines of banger. But yeah, good shout. Good shout, Aaron Hands. Banger. It was decent. Gravy. Different gravy. Yeah, we've been waiting for that for a while. And that's the thing, we don't want races like that every single weekend, but occasionally those chucked in, it's a completely different... It levels the playing field somewhat, but you also see certain cars performing well. The Ferraris, for example, in those conditions, their relative pace was just on another level. And obviously Mercedes, well, Lewis still managed to deliver, but Valtteri, wow, that was insane, wasn't it? Anyway, let's jump into the old results, people. Lewis from Sergio, from Sebastian, from Charles, Carlos, Max, Alex, Lando, Lance, and Danny Ricciardo, rolling out the top 10. My driver of the day, I've gone with Sebastian, and he won the popular vote, I think, as well, the official vote. And L of the day, it's got to be Valtteri, hasn't it? He had an absolute shocker. Now, driver of the day vote, to be fair, you could definitely argue driver of the day to any of those top three boys. So Lewis, coming from where he did, a race he didn't even need to win, but he still won. It wasn't looking like... He was looking very weak towards the start of the race, if not quite mediocre for big parts of it, but then just made it work. It's a fair play, Lewis. Sergio just didn't put a foot wrong all race. Positioned his car perfectly when Max tried to get up the inside and then ended up spinning. And then Vettel didn't make any mistakes. Insane start. Got to be top three starts of the year, that coming from 11th to 3rd in the first lap, 11th to 4th within the first 3 corners. Crazy. And then obviously L of the day, I did say this, Max, it was Max's race to lose, and as much as I rate Max as being, like, in terms of actual raw talent and pace, he's up there with Lewis for me. His decision-making at times during this race was very questionable, particularly with the Perez move, attempted move. But again, we'll cover all that as we go. Good performances galore, though. It was nice to see a mixed-up grid. I mean, in the end, apart from the Red Bull struggling, it wasn't any... There's no Hasses up there. There's no Williams up there. There's no Alfa Romeos up there. So it kind of did equal itself out towards the end. It's just the kind of Red Bulls that just seem to... The Red Bulls were very hot and cold yesterday. It was very strange. But anyway, let's talk about it. First qualifying, got to shout out Lance Stroll. Absolutely slap qualifying. He's known for being decent in wet weather. He's known for his starts as well, Lance. Call him a pay driver all you like. You can't help where you come from. Yes, he was born into a lot of money, but listen, he could have just sat around and slobbed it and just lived off daddy's cash for the rest of his life. But he chose, no, I'm going to be a Formula 1 driver, one of the most mentally stressful and challenging jobs in the world. And to put it on pole, you can't argue with that. He did a fantastic job, Lance. Both racing points just managed to find pace. The Ferraris were looking really good in practice. Couldn't translate that into qualifying for some reason, but then obviously recovered really well in the race. Obviously, again, Max feels like it was his to lose, and P2, Max hasn't got a pole this year, so he hasn't got a pole this year, has he? I don't think he does. But yeah, he hasn't got that, so obviously he was gutted that he didn't get that. You know, he's usually losing out to Lewis or Valtteri, not Lance. But again, it was a great qualifying session. It was proper dramatic. If any of you were watching along with my qualifying live stream, it was drama. We enjoyed that. It was very good. Unfortunately for Lance, I'm gutted for him. I am truly gutted for Lance. I really am. But anyway, start of the race. Red Bull, I would say, what team do you think is the worst at getting off the line? In the chat, let me know what you think. What team's the worst at getting off the line? Heart rate through the roof, exactly. The image of Max cowering behind the garbage chute after quali was 2020 in a nutshell. It was Case. I'm going to say Case. That's how I pronounce your name. Yep. Red Bulls. Yep. Everyone says Red Bull. It's just something about the Red Bull is just shocking off the line. Like, Alphas have banging starts. Racing Points tend to have good starts. It's not Racing Point. No way. It can't be Racing Point, surely. Red Bull's just always bad starts. And, I mean, Max just moved and then just stopped moving. I don't know what it is. Why they can't remedy that issue. With the amount of experience at Red Bull, you'd think. Something that's so, like, a race start is... you could argue, no, 100%. A good race, building a car that can get off the line quickly is more important than building a car that can qualify well. 100%. 100%. And it just happens again and again. It just happens so often. And both Red Bulls had a shocking start. Max even worse than Alex. Alex almost kind of got past him. He was kind of up the side. It's strange that just this is consistently happening for both drivers as well. That's the thing. Like, this has been a Red Bull thing all season. And again, maybe this is me looking for excuses for Alex. But what I will say, obviously Max has got qualifying pace. So he'll put himself P3 minimum, most weekends, right? If he has a bad start, the worst he's going to maybe lose is like a couple of positions, and then he'll move through because he's got unreal pace in a car that really suits him. With Alex, because he struggles more in qualifying and is more likely to qualify P5, P6, P7, that kind of area. And then he has a bad start and gets swallowed up and then goes down to you know what I mean? And then he's got a lot more to do to recover. And because he doesn't have the pace of Max and he's not as, suited to that car, I think if that Red Bull was a better starter, honestly, I think the championship could be in a very different place. I really do. Especially for Alex, but even for Max as well. I think he'd be a lot closer to Lewis. But yeah. Very strange. Very strange that they can't sort that out at Red Bull. But Vettel, polar opposite for Sebastian. We're used to Giovinazzi having 6 starts, and Science tends to have good starts. Science made up a arse ton of positions on the first lap. I think he went from P15 to I don't even know off the top of my head, to be honest. But Sebastian made up ridiculous. It's a P3 at the end of the first lap. Again, he made up 8 positions in 1 lap. So who cares about qualifying when you can start like that relative to everyone else? Yes, of course, the conditions meant that it's going to be exceptionally difficult to get off the line well. But also the Ferraris, both of them got off the line really well. Vettel just flew. It was mad. And of course he got kind of, he got fortunate with cars around him spinning out and could have easily got caught up in a situation. But you can say that about anyone as well. He did what he needed to do. He positioned the car where he needed to position it. And there you go. And as for the racing points, well, they just checked out, didn't they, at the start? Boom. Gone. Lance Stroll, he was off. He gapped Sergio by about 3 seconds after the first lap. And Sergio gapped Sebastian by 5. Flew off the line. Okay, Charles didn't get a good start. I to be fair, I just assumed he did, but I didn't pay attention to Charles at the start. But regardless, Charles still managed to pull through. But yeah, Sebi's start, unreal. Credit where credit's due. And the racing points, it looked like Sainz Seal delivered, didn't it, at the start? But we always knew that the track was going to dry, and that was always going to, lead to dodginess down the line, unfortunately. And then obviously Lewis, well, he managed to get up he had a decent start, Lewis, much better than the Red Bulls, flew past them, but then he just couldn't get the heat in the tyres, and this is what I mean about Mercedes were able to, or Lewis at least, you can't comment about Valtteri because he had just a shocker, but Lewis kind of had to sacrifice that first kind of quarter of the race, third of the race, to then have the pace. So when you equal it all out, he had a really good start and then it was slow, but then it came back to him, and he was able to make them tyres work way better than even the pink Mercedes. By the end of it, it was crazy. But it's nice seeing Lewis actually having to cut through and battle, and seeing him battle with Vettel and all that. It's actually a nice little throwback, isn't it? Things I like to see. Lewis just did an unreal job. Didn't put a foot wrong all race. Thoroughly deserved victory at the end of the day. But we'll get on to more about that later. But it was interesting how the race, it was so difficult. I think it's nigh on impossible to really judge anyone's performance, because you got 1 minute, people are catching people by 3 seconds a lap, and then within a few laps, then all of a sudden they're a second slower because the tyres fall off. It was weird. It was a very strange race. It was impossible to predict how that could have turned out. If you watch to the end of the 4th lap and you think Lewis is going to win that race, Sebastian's going to come 3rd. I mean, there was the period when Alex overtook Sebastian and Lewis, which of course I was very happy about. He was flying past him, and then a few laps later, they're both flying past him, and it's crazy. It is crazy, but that's what I like. Unpredictability. That's what we want. That's ultimately what we want from the sport. We don't want to be able to predict. When I do my live stream, I want my predictions to be wrong. I mean, I know that's qualifying, but I want them to be wrong still because I don't want it to be predictable. But anyway, Verstappen. Max. I say Valtteri's L of the day. He spun more than Max, but Max spun like. Did he have? He had 2 proper spins, didn't he? And then he had quite a lot of like understeer moments, going way off track and almost spinning, like into the final corner and that. I think again this Lewis's maturity in his decision making, in his driving, in his positioning, in the moves that he did make and the moves that he didn't make. For even like you said at the end, like not pitting because he knows that he knows how he lost his title chance in 2007. Max is still a very young guy. We forget because he's been in F1 for so long. We forget how young he is, and if he hadn't have made that move on Perez, tried to make that move on Perez, which is not even a move, like it's a quick right-hander, and it's wet, and so of course, as soon as I was like, of course he's gonna understeer and spin out on the ice rink that's formed on the side of the track. I think it's. Max will look back on that and be really disappointed, I think, with himself. I've got the sun's coming out, so I'm about to light up like a Christmas tree, I think. Max is quality. Max is different gravy. I said it before. I'll say it again. But once that happened, then it kind of got in his head, got to him, and he wasn't able to recover the result. Because arguably he could have... Look, we'll never know how the Red Bull would have ended up, because ultimately, again, there was a period where Max was catching Alex at a rate of knots and then was kind of stuck behind him for loads of laps, because then all of a sudden the tyres fell off, and then the tyres would be good and then they'd fall off because there'd be grain in, but then once you got through the grain, then they'd turn into semi-slicks, which is what Lewis and Sergio ended up doing, and then they got loads of pace again. So that's what I think. That's fascinating. I love that side of it. And yes, I don't think it, like, if Sebastian was in a, I don't know, racing point, would he have finished as high as he did? You can never know, because every single car handled those conditions differently. But that's what, look, it's a team sport at the end of the day. We forget that sometimes. And some cars work better in some places. I am getting bright here. I'm just going to turn this down. Don't mind me. There we go. But yeah, bit of a weekend to forget for Max. Points could have been a lot better. But anyway, Alex, again, obviously, if anyone's seen my little appearance on the Veloce backseat driver video, give that a watch if you haven't. Obviously, I was very excited and very, very, very nervous, sick with nerves at one stage when Alex was catching Sergio in P2 at like 2 seconds a lap. Oh my giddy odd. Oh dear. I was so stressed. And then he caught him. And then obviously, again, it's difficult to get moves done on that track, because as soon as you come off the line, you lose all pace. And I wasn't surprised that when Alex got behind, he kind of kept that gap solid. But then he started to fall back, which was, again, did he go too hard on the tyres at the start? One thing I will say, I do think the Red Bulls were must have been particular, because I feel like, I don't know, everyone did it at times, but I feel like, oh, well, here we go. Wow, the sun's really coming out now. I feel like the Red Bulls were going offline and cooling their tyres more than most of the other teams, I feel. I could be wrong. But I feel like that was a particular Red Bull thing. I'm going to have to close that blind. Sorry, everyone. There we go. Now I'm too dark. Great. Boom. Yeah, I feel like that was a particular Red Bull thing. I don't know. And obviously, yeah, if Alex had DRS, he could have possibly, he could have got past, but obviously the track was way too wet for them to do DRS, which is fair. But yeah, it feels like both Red Bulls were constantly pulling offline to cool their tyres. So it was almost like they just munched through their tyres way too quickly, the Red Bull boys. But again, that's if both cars are doing it, then that shows that they are inherently very much the same car, which I do believe is true. As much as I'm an Alex fan, I don't buy that he's got a massively different car to Max. I just think that that's very, again, geared to Max's specific driving style, which everyone's got different driving styles. But whatever. To everyone who just says I'll make excuses for Alex all the time. No, I'm just reading it how I see it, okay? But anyway. Valtteri Bottas. Oh, Valtteri. I actually thought he got tagged on that first lap. I just assumed that someone had caught him and he'd spun. But no, he just spun on his own. Now, obviously, he did have to get onto a very, very, very wet part of the track to avoid the spinning Esteban Ocon. So, am I going to be hard on Valtteri for that? No. Wrong place, wrong time. Wasn't really his fault, if you ask me. So I don't think you can get too much on him for that. But then he just kept spinning. That first corner, like that first kind of left and then right, and he just kept spinning. It's just Valtteri. When you look at how measured Lewis's performance was versus Valtteri, like again when Lewis was coming to overtake Valtteri, to lap Valtteri, which again because he spun so much and obviously the conditions, blah blah blah. And Valtteri just looked out of control of that car. I mean, you can see he just wanted that race to end. But these drivers are human. And if you're having a shocking race, then you're not going to be as focused and as on it and as motivated throughout the rest of the race. And a race like that, where you need to be so in the zone. I mean, massively impressive that there wasn't more incidents yesterday, to be honest. There are a lot of spins, but there weren't really any proper bins into the wall. Like Giovinazzi's car broke down. Grosjean and Latifi came together. But other than that, there wasn't too much in terms of proper argy-bargy. I was a bit... I don't know what you lot think actually about Lando's move on George. I thought that was a bit... That was on the cusp. I could see why George was annoyed about that. But I don't know. What do you lot think? Melina, when I saw yellow flags, I thought Seb spun, but it was always Bottas. Force a habit. I mean, Seb didn't spin once. Fair play. But yeah, I don't know about the Lando. It was on the cusp, wasn't it? He proper threw it up the inside. Oh, it's good to see. Good to see. But he didn't get a... Would I... I think it was probably just on the cusp of fair. I mean, again, it's racing, isn't it? You know, you can't punish every time cars touch. Like, he saw an opportunity, went into the gap, and, you know. Oh, thank you, Clorox Bleach, for the $2 mate. Thank you, pal. Far too kind. Sad for Lance, but Lewis isn't 7-time champion for no reason. Spot on. Couldn't agree more. But yeah. Bottas, got to move on for that one. Do I think Valtteri's good enough? I think over a lap, Valtteri is very, very, very good. Over a single lap. Does he have the race pace? Will he win a title? I don't think he will. I don't think. But at the same time, why would Mercedes change what is working as a great formula for the team? 7 world titles for Lewis. However many constructors they've got now in a row. It's ridiculous. Bottas has a capitulation clause in his contract. Thank you, Chinwag, for the $5, mate. Appreciate it. I think it would take... Bottas is definitely going to be around next year. I think, obviously, George is looking like he's the most likely to get that seat. He made a big cock-up, didn't he? He made a big cock-up. I didn't even see that either because I hadn't even tuned in yet because I was still getting out of bed. But he crashed in the pit lane. I haven't even seen it, actually. I haven't seen the incident, but apparently it was a bit of a schoolboy. Obviously, look, the conditions are mad. So these things will happen. But George has had a couple of shockers last few weeks, hasn't he? Thank you, Winchy, as well, for the £2, mate. Far too kind. Seb spun twice this season, but has spun 6 times. There you go. There you go. Has Seb spun twice this season? He spun at Austria. He spun at Silverstone. Was it only them 2? I can't even remember. But yeah, obviously, like Russell's definitely got the pace and the potential. That young drivers make mistakes. I think we give there's not anywhere near as much pressure on George than there is on Alex, so that we give George more benefit of the doubt. But listen, oh yeah, Nürburgring as well. Sochi and quality. Yeah, I think it's spun more than twice, wouldn't you? Yeah, Austria he spun, Silverstone he spun, Nürburgring he spun. But anyway, whatever. That's besides the point. Bottas has still spun more than Seb this year. That was the point you were making, and that is very true. Oh, Lance. It was looking so good, and so for so much of the race as well. He was just like, he was loving life. He was flying. Again, it's Perez. I think Perez was able to persist with those tyres and turn them into slick intermediates, as we're calling them. Pitting was a mistake. He didn't sound like he didn't want to pit either. Racing Point strategy robbed Perez of a result last week, but then gained Perez and helped Perez get a result this week. But then this week it's kind of robbed Lance of a better result. He probably wouldn't have won. Like, I feel like, Lewis still would have caught him, but he could have very much taken that, like taken a podium for sure, man. Like Lance. And then obviously you could see as he was falling back and then he was getting in silly scraps, like when was it? The Ferrari came past, one of the Ferraris came past, and then he tried to defend and ended up losing that position again, and then to the other Ferrari, and then almost Alex went past him as well. It is Josh. Justice for Sir Lancelot. I hope you've sold a lot of those teas, mate. It's a great time to market them after Lance's pole position. Thank you, Meta V2, for joining Friends of Tomo. Appreciate that. Yeah, I feel like it's easy to say in hindsight that if Stroll had stayed out and persisted, the tyre would have come back to him and turned into a slick intermediate. But you just never know. Like, if Sergio had pitted, he probably would have had a shocker as well. Like, I feel like that was just the way to go for Racing Point for that car specifically. Was Stroll begging to pit? I just remember hearing the radio message saying we're going to pit you, and him just being like, why? Because when he said the tyres were dead, he was talking about the graining. But this is what happened. You had the fresh intermediate really quick, then it starts to grain, goes really slow, but then you get through the graining, you persist, and then it becomes a slick intermediate, and then you gain pace again. So you go up and then down and then up again. He was obviously really struggling, but if he'd persisted, I think he would have done a lot better. But anyway, hindsight's an easy thing to say. Ferraris, obviously, shout out the Ferraris. No Bonotto this weekend, and listen, I've said this before, I say it again. Matthias should be in a technical role, not in a leadership role. Or a technical leadership role, not a team leadership role. And both cars delivered, They had a poor qualifying, but in the race they made good calls on strategy. They kind of messed up Seb's pit a little bit, which maybe robbed him of a second place there. It's easy, but then you don't know how that would have... The knock-on effect of him having a quicker pit stop might have resulted in something totally different. We don't know. But, yeah, I think did a great job. Both did a great job. Again, that car I think that car's from what they were talking about on commentary, like that car struggled with working the tyres too hard, and the tyres are too hot to work well. But then obviously in conditions like this, that's kind of what you want. And that's why they did so well towards the start of the race. And I think just credit to Seb and credit to Charles as well. Both very, 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 very good drivers who just didn't put a foot wrong, apart from Charles, into that last corner, into that last chicane. Thank you, Heron Dejit, for the $5. Appreciate it, mate. Probably the high point for Ferrari this season because next GPs are not super favourable to their car. Yeah, I agree. I think it is. It's promising, but also it was such a freak race that, I think they're going to be back below the Renaults and the Racing Points and the McLarens, and obviously the Red Bulls and Mercedes next weekend, or the next races going forward, because it's a shame. But yeah, Charles just, I don't, if you haven't heard the Charles radio message from after the race, go on it's F1 Fun For You, great YouTube channel, has all of the team radios after the race, and Charles is absolutely fuming with himself. It's actually jokes, but and team radios. Well, you might be doing a video about team radios this week. I have to wait for that. But yeah, he dropped a couple of IMF-ing stupids. He was not happy, and you can understand that Charles has always been very harsh on himself, and is a very determined young man. He's got to the position he has through that kind of mentality. So fair play. But look, it's still a great result for Ferrari. It could have been a 2-4. It was a 3-4 instead. So the team did lose out a little bit on points, and obviously, yeah, it's difficult. It is difficult. Shame for Charles, but obviously as well, he said like he's happy for Seb, and I'm buzzing for Seb, man. Like Seb's had a horrible year, been very low on confidence, hasn't been performing this year. Like it's just objectively true. Him and Albon have had very similar seasons, both being massively outperformed by their teammates, both struggling with the car that's underneath them. Yes, they come from Alex's it's only second year in Formula One. Seb's a veteran, but it's great to see. And yeah, obviously Seb kind of, to be honest, Seb's such a gent as well. He's such a nice, the way he was just very, he was more gassed about Lewis getting his 7th title than he was about his own 3rd place, which I think just says a lot about the man. I really do. But yeah, GG Ferrari. And also, shout out to the McLarens. Carlos Sainz came from, I think he was P50, 14? I can't remember. But he was well out. Both McLarens out in Q2. Lando gets fastest lap and was punting in fastest laps left, right and centre towards the end of that race. Carlos up to P5. My last video, I put Carlos as my wet weather merchant. And a lot of people, the amount of comments I saw, oh, Max is much better in wet weather. Max had a shocker, spinning left, right and centre. Carlos, boom, P5. Now, yeah, of course, Max isn't as bad in the wet as he was yesterday. Like, he obviously just was very wound up and in a twitchy car. These things happen. But Carlos, mate. Carlos smashed it. Great result for him. He just made moves through the field throughout. He made a lot of places at the start and then in the race as well. He just Mr. Consistent, got past Danny Rick. Danny Rick made a little bit of a mistake. Up on through. And then obviously Lando as well. Did Lando make any mistakes, really? It was kind of quite a slow race. Not a slow race, quite a quiet race for a lot of it. But yeah, just the performance ramped up towards the end. Again, probably slicked immediates that were doing it. But Carlos is a quality wet weather driver. And I think a lot of people weren't aware of it. And you saw it because he was definitely up there in terms of the best drives of the day. When you think how many positions he made up and the manner in which he made up those positions, both at the start and by cutting through, making moves. Carlos smashed it. McLaren impressed. this third place fight for the constructors is definitely going down to the wire. Racing Point, if Lance hadn't had such a poor end of the race, would have been really put themselves in a commanding position. But the fact that they dropped, just, it's good though. More interesting, isn't it? And yeah, obviously I've kind of talked about this already, but yeah, Seb snuck into P3. Charles made the mistake. GG, Seb. Well played. I've already talked about this. Lewis, let's talk about Lewis. No one has to support Lewis. You can support whoever you like, okay? I consider... Would I say I'm a Lewis? Yeah, I would say I'm a Lewis Hamilton fan. I wouldn't say I'm a... Not as much as other drivers. There's not many drivers that I wouldn't say I'm fans of. But the man's just... There's nothing more he can do. The people who don't like him and will always say that he's just got the best car or blah, 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 all this stuff. You will never change their minds. You will never change their minds. You look at it objectively. Look at the numbers, look at the performances, look at the stats objectively. He's won in every single season that he's raced in Formula One, which has included a couple of absolute dogs, McLarens. His first season at Mercedes, that was not a race-winning car, yet he won races. Or I can't even remember how many races he won in his first year. Lewis he's got to be. Look, you can't say, and what I have stopped saying now, because I used to be like, if I had to pick someone, I would say I think Lewis is the greatest of all time. But it's impossible to say that for sure, because you can't compare to someone like Jim Clark, who I think's up there as well in the conversation for sure. You can't even compare him to Schumacher, because it's a different era, different, like, relative to the... It's like trying to compare, I don't know, Messi to Best or to Maradona. You know, it's difficult. Like, you can't. It's impossible to say for sure. It's just opinions. But he's got to be up there in the conversation, regardless of, you know, people are going to hate on him. Listen, like, he's doing the talking on track. He's won in every single year he's raced in. He won that race where he had no right to. He's Mr. Consistent. It was nothing flamboyant and crazy yesterday. He just got the job done, got on with it. And yeah, everyone's telling me to check Racing Point Twitter. So what have they said on Twitter? Actually, tell you what I will do. That with the power of... Hang on, I'll have to set this up 2 seconds so that everyone else can see this as well. Because it's just rude of me, isn't it, to just look on my own. Let's get Twitter up on my laptop. Racing Point... BWT Racing Point Formula 1 team. Okay. Right, let's open that. And then let's do a little screen share. And then change this to... Boom. Okay, here we go, people. Oh, that's a bit Ariana Grande. There we go. That's lovely. Move that over there. All right, so... Okay, so this is about Lance. This will update. During the team's routine post-race car set down, we discovered damage to the underside of Lance Stroll's front wing that was a significant contributor to the graining issues he experienced during his second and third stints on the intermediate tyres at the Turkish Grand Prix. Lance reported poor tyre performance, significant understeer and graining from lap 17 onwards in the race, pitting for a fresh set of intermediates on lap 36 failed to resolve the problem, with the graining becoming even more severe. One of the strakes on the underside of the front wing had come loose and lodged itself in such a way that the blockage causes significant loss of front downforce. The resultant loss of front downforce contributed to increased levels of graining, which makes sense. Data during the race confirmed there was a significant loss of front downforce, but there was, with no visible damage to the top side of the front wing, combined with the low grip conditions, it was difficult to confirm whether the data was correct. It was only after the race, when the car returned to the garage, that the damage and the blockage to the underside of the front wing was discovered. There you go. I mean, that makes sense. when you consider Sergio's performance and how relative, I was quite surprised because Lance was ahead of Sergio for most of the race, or a big chunk of the race. And look, I think this makes sense. Sure, like Racing Point don't have to come out and say this. You know, they don't have to make stuff up. Like, they could just carry on. But I think that makes sense when you consider what happened and how it turned out and how Lance's pace just fell off. Like, it doesn't just go like that just because he's rich. Like, come on. Yeah, exactly. Lance did have better pace than Sergio. Like, ever so slightly. Like, he pulled away on the first lap and just kept that gap consistent, didn't he? So, sad to say. Very sad to say. But, listen, like, it was a good performance. Like, Lance has got to be proud of himself for that one. All in all, great performance, really. Anyone else who haven't really given a shout out in the results? Again, Serge, everyone wants me to talk about, because of course, it's the Albon fan. Let's talk about Alex Albon. I thought Alex had a good race. Alex, he had one spin, which was his mistake. At that corner, that was the corner where most people seem to be spinning, apart from Bottas, who was just spinning all over the place. Do I think this was a good result for Alex that will, in terms of when you think of results, right, and it's like, will Red Bull thumbs up or thumbs down, right? The last 3 races, unfortunately, have all been thumbs down for Alex. He's had 3 really poor races. This race, I would say, is thumbs up. I think he's done a good job. Like, I don't think he could have done much more apart from the spin again, which did, probably lost him at least a position. Probably maybe 2 positions, but otherwise he had a very solid race. Max was spinning like crazy and Alex wasn't, in the car that suits Max more. Alex was driving to the limit of that car better than Max was. Or more consistently. Max, of course, was quicker. And again, Alex, yes, at one stage he was on pace to win, but then the tyres fell off. And you could say that about a lot of people. I think Alex had a very solid race. But when one of the people who's up for your seat takes a P2 and has a faultless race, again, it's as good a result as Alex had. Red Bull, in a race like this, you can't really look at the results. You have to look at the performances because, every single car is different and blah, blah, blah. Like, for a race like this, I think that Alex did well, but I think Sergio performed better, of course. He didn't make any mistakes. Great manager of tyres. What I will say is that a lot of people, again, in my video about Dream F1 driver, was like, why don't you pick Sergio for tyre management? And Sergio proved it. But also Lewis proved it. Both great at tyre managing. So either or, that if you assembling your perfect driver, either or. Do I think the best driver for the seat would be Perez? I do. Do I think Perez will get the seat? I think Nico Hülkenberg is more likely because of his relationship with Max, and I think he'd be more happy to sit as a second driver. But then Sergio's going to bring a lot of money in, which could help support the Red Bull Honda engine takeover thing. It's difficult. And then obviously Alex is a lot younger. Red Bull want Alex to be the one who makes it work because, he's younger, he's Red Bull Academy. It's going to be less embarrassing for them. And also the tyre connection, which is obvious. That is obviously a thing that exists and probably has an impact as well. We'll see. I don't think we'll find out until the end of the season. I really don't. And yes, of course, Red Bull already have money coming in. But again, they've talked about taking on this engine thing, and the idea of not doing it is because it's too expensive. Well, an extra 40 million or whatever that Sergio's bringing in, I think it's something like that, would be great. But yeah. I know Albon's older than Max, but he's still young. Just because he's older than Max doesn't mean he's still younger than Perez and Hülkenberg. Tyre connection. Well, when I say Thai connection, I mean like because Red Bull is part Thai owned, isn't it? You've got Matashits and I can't remember the Thai businessman who they started Red Bull up together. But yeah, science was quality. But I do think, yeah, it was a positive performance from Alex, and I hope he can take it onto these last 3 races and really give Red Bull something to think about. Because right now it's still with two prospects, the quality of Nico Hulkenberg and Sergio Perez looking for a seat, and your driver struggling. Like, come on. But yeah, I think Perez is the better driver, but I think Nico is more likely to get the seat. But listen, if Alex has a banging last few races, and I've said this time and time again, it hasn't happened, but it could be very good, because all the other seats, like, we know that it's going to be not Sorokin, we know it's going to be Mazepin and Schumacher at Haas. Like, it's not confirmed, but it's pretty much confirmed, isn't it? And then obviously Mercedes is going to say the same, and blah blah blah. But yeah, anyway, I think we're done, people. Thank you all for tuning in. What a race it was. What is the next race? Is it Bahrain out? I haven't even checked.
Not on next week.
Yeah, but I mean, like, next race is, yeah. Oh, it's Bahrain. Just normal Bahrain. In 2 weeks' time. There we go. And then it's the week after that, it's the Oval. And then the week after that, it's Abu Dhabi. The final. And F2 will be back as well. Happy days. God, I haven't seen F2. I forgot about F2. Jeez. Galao returns to F2. Oh, no Yuri Vips. That's true. It's good to see Sean's recovered from his injury, though. It's a bit of a scary one, that. But yeah. Anyway. Thank you all for watching. Minton's barking for some reason. He really wants me to finish the stream, apparently. Should be a new video coming out on, like, Wednesday. I'm aiming for Wednesday. Minton's still barking. You can obviously see a dog outside. But yeah. So keep your eyes out on Wednesday. Watch Backseat Driver if you haven't already, because I'm in it and Minton's in it. So what more could you ask for? Thank you to everyone who became a member and donated. Sven Bishop, sorry, I almost missed your membership. Thank you for joining Friends of Tomo. Thank you for all the support, as always. Appreciate you all taking the time. Have a good day. Be nice to each other. Ciao, adios. I'm done.